What's going on, y'all? Welcome to Marshall Time, episode 4. We almost at that halfway point to double digits. What's going on, bro?
It's good, bro. How you doing?
Good. Appreciate you guys watching this. If you haven't yet, subscribe. I'm going to say that now from every show. I've been wanting to say it, so I remember to say subscribe, like, share it to all your socials, share it with your friends, and we're gonna keep this thing pushing and growing. So, why we're here to talk some hoops. There's been a big conversation when it comes to the MVP conversation about why certain people are given more attention when it comes to that, or votes, who's more deserving. And it's mainly about two players, right? Joel Embiid of the Sixers, Nikola Jokic of the Nuggets. I think undoubtedly the two best big men in the league. I don't think you can even debate that. I think talking about overall skill, two top 5 talents in this league. Here's where I stand. I think last year, Joel Embiid was the MVP. They finished higher than, I think that the Nuggets finished 6th last year, if I'm not mistaken.
They did.
The Sixers finished higher, in their conference. Joel Embiid kept the team afloat throughout the Ben Simmons situation before he was traded to Brooklyn for James Harden, because James Harden didn't come around until that was a deadline deal, right? So
February.
Yeah, so it was half the season left, but prior to that, he kept them afloat. The Sixers were a contender in the Eastern Conference, and Joel Embiid was the main reason. You can make an argument that no other player had an impact on their team if Joel Embiid was the guy. You can make a case for, Giannis, Luka, but Joel Embiid led the league in scoring. As a big man in today's game, we just don't see that. Averaging 30 a game. In a game that's dominated by the guards, for a big man to dominate and to lead the league in scoring. And he's doing it again this year, right? So, but just talking last year strictly, I think in every metric that I look at, the value, the dominance, the team, you can't say, oh, well, player A I voted for player A because his team is winning. Well, player A finished below the Sixers, right? We're talking about the Joker. And so that's where I stand on it when it comes to last year. Now, this year, I honestly think Jokic has a better case this year than last year. Why? Because Denver is the best team in the Western Conference. They have been from the jump. They've been consistent. And what he's done this year has been amazing. I can't take anything away from Jokic, right? And so everything they do revolves around him. And they've been playing at such a high level. And so I think Jokic's case is even more stronger than last year. I wouldn't be mad if they gave it to Jokic this year, because then I could say, okay, they're the first seed in the Western Conference. I get it. And he's the main reason for that. But last year was just, I thought it was like a case of what else can Joel Embiid do? I think that was peak Joel Embiid that we saw last year. And he's leading the league in scoring again this year. He's increased the scoring as a big man. So I think last year they got it wrong. That's not to say Jokic, in these conversations, I don't want to knock down one player to prop up another, right? Because they're both deserving. You can make a case for Giannis, Steph Curry. You can make a case for him last year and what he did for the Warriors, and Luka. Like, you can make a case for a lot of these guys. But for a guy to drop 30 points a game, to be the main reason why his team is even mentioned as a contender, yeah, it's pretty wild to me. And even this season, what he's doing, yeah, this season is different for me now. I will say, if Jokic wins the MVP, I wouldn't be upset. Last year, yeah, I was kind of like, okay, what's going on here? And even just how each player is looked at, I feel like there's more hype and attention with the Joker versus Embiid, right? With the analytics talk and everything like that. But we're seeing what Embiid's doing is not normal. And so there's definitely, but that's always the case, right? There's always going to be one player that's the media darling versus the other guy, right? And so that's where I stand on it. This year, I have a feeling that Jokic is going to do it again. But I feel like this year is deserving more so than last year. So, yeah, I'll let you take it away.
So my take on the MVP situation is what is the criteria? I feel like there's no consistency when it comes to the MVP award and the MVP race, the MVP talk. Last year, personally, I wasn't mad that Jokic won it because I understood that the Sixers on paper, we had the better team towards the end of the season once we got Harden. I understand that Embiid did suffer some injuries down the line, but if you go back and remember, they were neck and neck for a few weeks there. And then what happened was the Nuggets played the Sixers and the Nuggets beat the Sixers. And that, as a result, put Jokic over the hump in the race to overtake and beat for number one. Okay, fair. So we fast forward to this season. The Nuggets are top seed in the West. Sixers are a top 3 seed in the East. Okay, both teams have, battle with injuries in their lineups, inconsistencies in their lineups, whatever. Okay. Embiid and Jokic play each other again this year. Embiid cooks Jokic. I'm talking, gave him 40, right? We were down 20. He led us to a comeback. Okay. In the next week, the MVP rankings was still Jokic number one and Embiid two. Where is the consistency in that? If we're playing each other, if we're the two best centers in the league, and we're playing each other one-on-one, right? And I clearly outplay and lead my team to a comeback victory on a primetime game, how am I not overtaking you for the MVP race? Okay. That's number one. Number two, we know for years they stopped LeBron from getting MVP every year because of the, voter fatigue, voter bias, all that stuff. So therefore, Jokic is about to win his third straight. Okay. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve that, but what has he done so differently from other players in the past that didn't get it three years in a row? You know what I mean? Even Giannis. I saw a quote from Tim McMahon from ESPN. He was saying, Giannis. This was maybe last year or the year before, but they resurfaced it for this situation. They were like, Giannis, I can't vote him 3 times because he hasn't taken his team to the finals yet. This is before the Bucks won the finals. Jokic hasn't even made the finals yet either. But I guarantee you today that them voters is going to be in there voting for Jokic for the 3rd time. So that's my point. I don't get what's the criteria. Where's the consistency at? What is MVP? Is it really most valuable player? Is it, all right, by definition, most valuable player? Who's the most valuable to their team? Is it who's the best player in the league? Is it who has the better looking stats? And I just feel like it's too many narratives out there for one guy or the other. If you ask me personally, Embiid's the MVP for this simple reason. Anytime he plays a top center, he cooks them. Okay. Offensively, he's averaging the same amount of points as Luka Doncic. Okay. And he might end up leading the league in scoring again. And he's dominant on the defensive side. As a basketball fan, knowledgeable about the game, right? It's 2 sides of the game. It's offense and defense. If you got somebody that's leading the league in scoring and they're dominant on the other side and their team is playing good, how can I argue against him being MVP? Especially if he's playing against the other MVP guy and he absolutely cooked them. Like in the 4th quarter, hitting them, crossing them up, step back jumpers, daggers. As a fan watching that game, how can you sit there and say, oh, this guy isn't the MVP, it's the guy that's getting cooked? That doesn't even sound right. You know what I mean? And that's not to say Jokic is a bad player. He's an awesome player. He's one of the best big men ever. And if he gets MVP again, I will not be mad because honestly, he deserves it and B deserves it. And you can make the argument for Giannis too. But I just want to know what's the consistency, where's the criteria at? That's my problem with the MVP situation.
Yeah, well, there is no consistency because they could have given it to Bron every year. You could have given it to Giannis every year, right? And that most valuable conversation, if you take any of these guys out of the lineup, it's different. You take Giannis out of Milwaukee, you take Joel outside of Philly, you take Jokic out of Denver, we know what the result is, right? Let's not. So, okay. Now what's the next, criteria? As you mentioned, it's offense and defense. Who's having the most impact on both ends of the floor, right? We're talking about Joel and Giannis then, right? We want to go there. So I think in these conversations, and people can say what they want, there is a bias when it comes to how certain players are covered in voting. And when it comes to this Jokic and Embiid conversation, you see it on social media when Jokic does something versus Embiid, it seems like Jokic's performances are propped up or they're hyped up more than what Embiid did, right? In the analytical talk and the analytics and all that, it it kind of sways a little bit. I don't think Joel Embiid really gets the credit I don't think people realize how special he is. Like he's doing something that it's not normal. He's a big man that's leading the league in scoring back-to-back years in today's game. Like this is a guard dominated era. And as a big man, he's been dominant, leading the league in scoring. And so I really don't know. I sense it going Jokic way, especially since they're the top seed in the Western Conference. That's why I say this year I can see it. Miss me with last year. That was even when Embiid got hurt, I felt his case was still so much stronger. When you're talking about most valuable and what the Sixers had to deal with Ben Simmons and trying to keep things afloat, Embiid was carrying that team. Like he carried that team, and I still think that was the best we've seen Joel Embiid play on both ends of the floor, and he really wanted it. You could tell. I feel like he really wanted it. I think now he still wants it, obviously, but I don't think it's driving him as much as winning in the playoffs, and that's what all that matters. When we talk about Jokic, it's the same with Embiid. Like they haven't made the championship game, they haven't made the finals yet. They both have something to prove in the playoffs, right? Giannis, when it comes to this MVP conversation, Giannis is the only one that's actually won it. So it'll be interesting to see. Now, the Sixers are in third place as of today, midweek. The way Boston's playing, if the Sixers can slide up to the 2 spot, I don't know if they'll catch Milwaukee, but if Philly finishes in the 2nd spot, I think Denver has the first place on lock in the Western Conference. But you got to give Embiid the MVP. You have to. You just have to. I mean, James Harden sat out against the Minnesota game, and we saw what Embiid did. Cooked the entire, team. The guy that people say was Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert, right? He's won multiple Defensive Player of the Years. He couldn't check him. But Embiid has done this, like you said, against all the top bigs. And so just off the strength of last year, Embiid should win. Embiid should have an MVP. He should have it. You look back at his resume when it's all said and done. And for us to say he doesn't have an MVP, if that were to be the case, I think that would be crazy. He has to have an MVP at least once. And these are the best 2 years that we've ever seen Joel Embiid play. And for him to not have at least one MVP during this run, yeah, I don't understand it. I don't understand it.
And I just think like his defense gets overlooked sometimes because we see he puts up the big points. But like I look back to that Memphis game, we played him a couple weeks ago. He shot terribly that game. Jaren Jackson did a great job of defending him, but he still impacted that game because he had 6 blocks and a lot of rebounds, and he had a big block against John Morant, who tried to poster him, and he literally palmed the ball out of midair. Jokic isn't doing that. That's not to bring Jokic down, but it's like if Jokic was to have a bad shooting night in Denver, which rarely happens because they play so efficient and their offense is a whole different situation over there. I feel like his defense, he wouldn't make up for it on defense. And B literally made up for his lack of offense on defense that game. Like I watched it with my own eyes. You know what I mean? So I just look at that when it comes to MVP. Like, what are you doing for your team? I know Jokic, they run the whole offense through him. You know what I mean? And he's a great rebounder. But it's 2 sides of the ball. Like I said, I like offense. If you can do the 2-way thing, you elite on offense, elite on defense, I can't really go against you. Jokic is not a bad defender, but he's not elite. Just like
Right.
Embiid isn't a bad passer. Embiid has improved his playmaking a lot. If you watch any Sixers basketball, you will know that. But he's not Jokic level. So
He's
you know
not.
what I mean? It's just it goes hand in
They
hand.
each have an edge over the other on. You know what I'm saying? Like they have an edge. Each of these guys have an edge,
Right. And I
right?
feel like rim protection from your center is more valuable than passing from your center.
Yeah.
And in grand schemes of things, you know what I mean? Especially when it comes to just team basketball, you need rim
Right.
protection. So that's just how I
Yeah.
look at it.
It's an interesting conversation, man. I enjoy watching both these guys, right? And I
Yeah.
hate that, the conversation has gotten to a point where it's pitting, these guys against each other in such a way and how the conversation has been. But I enjoy watching them both. But Joel Embiid deserves an MVP. That's just what it is. And I think, man, it's tough because Denver, the fact that Denver's in that top spot, they have an even stronger case for Joker this year, right? And that's why I can say, okay, I could see this year over last year more so than ever. But to me, Joel Embiid's season last year, I can't let that one go. I can't. Like that was the best player in the league last year to me. That's from my eyes. Just the way he dominated on both ends. Yeah, that was the best player. And he's doing it again this year. He's doing it again this year. So we'll see. We'll see. Now it's March. Conference tournaments wrapping up. Got selection Sunday coming up for March Madness. If you're a hoop head, the best time of the year. Upsets. You can see some of the rising prospects, the next generation of stars in the NBA. This year is going to be interesting because I don't think there's that one juggernaut or two juggernaut teams where in the past you had the Kentuckys that were loaded with the one and done guys. Even you had the Gonzagas of the past couple of years who were just running the table that were a favorite pick. I think there's a solid 5 or 6 teams that have a chance, legit chance at winning the championship. And I think this year more than ever, I mean, we see upsets all the time, right? But I feel like it might be even crazier. It might be even crazier this year. So I wrote down a list of teams that I trust because when it comes to tournament time, picking out your bracket, it's all about trust. Who do you trust to advance and avoid the upset? My number one team is Houston. They have the experience. They've made deep runs. Kelvin Sampson's an amazing coach. They have the solid guard playing Marcus Sasser, Jamal Shed. They have some tough bigs. Just the way they play. I talked about this before. They play in a way that most teams I don't think are used to playing. If you're not in their conference, you're not used to playing their style of basketball. If you haven't watched them play, they're full tilt. They're cutting hard, running hard off the ball. They're crashing the boards hard. All their movements. Just watch how they move off the ball defensively. It's just an intense style of play that I think bodes well in the tournament. And they have experience, which is huge. You have the guard play, you have experience, you have the coaching. I can trust that. The same thing for Kansas, too. They have the coaching, Bill Self, proven. They won the national championship last year, so they know what that takes. They know what that's about. And so I trust Kansas. Even Alabama, they have a pretty elite player in Brandon Miller who's been hooping this year. If you have one of those guys, you can do some damage. And I like Baylor, too. I know UCLA is up there. They have that experience too, but something about Baylor and Scott Drew, every year they always find a way they always have a group of guards. They just keep having these guards every year. They have Keontae George, a freshman. They have some experienced guards there. And Scott Drew just knows what he's doing. And they have that experience when it comes to tournament play. And that's just a name brand in college basketball that you can trust. So I do think a Texas team is going to be in the championship game, whether it's Houston, whether it's Baylor. I would say Houston, but Texas will be represented in the championship game, I think, this year. And Texas just beat Kansas, too, so that's another squad. But I trust Houston and Baylor more so than Texas. But, yeah, I like Houston, I like Kansas, I like Bama, and I like Baylor. And a team that I don't know, I think they're a Sweet 16 team for sure that I've just enjoyed watching is Indiana. I like Trace Jackson Davis. He can sort of raise his stock up. He's an experienced player. All around, he's just solid. Has put up a lot of points in his career. And then Jalen Hood-Schifino, a freshman point guard. He's been legit this year. So I feel like they can make some noise. But Houston, Baylor, Bama, Kansas. This is obviously we don't have the bracket, so a lot of it depends on matchup. But those are the teams I trust, especially Houston.
Yeah, I trust the same teams that you do actually, because I mean, like you said, they've been proven. Of course, we have Houston. They've made the deep runs. They play defense. They play physical. Like I remember watching when they were playing Villanova last season in the tournament. Like they were just all on this. They weren't trying to let it shoot. It was a real physical game, and that's how they play. And they're well coached. They're solid. And they've been solid for the past, like 4 or 5 years, maybe even longer than that. They've just been there right in the mix. So they've been knocking on that door, and they're easily the favorite to win. But as we know, the favorite don't usually win in March Madness. There's always a lot going on, always something going on. I also like Alabama. I like the way they play. It's like that modern NBA style. Let's play fast, get these threes up, let's go to the rim, try to draw a foul. Um, and Brandon Miller, I just think he's just a phenomenal talent, like especially from the scoring standpoint. 6'9", he can get to a bucket in many ways. He doesn't have to do a lot of dribbling, gets to his spots, can catch and shoot. And he plays D. So I think that'll take them a long way. That's something that I feel like Alabama hasn't really had in their past teams. Like they've had solid guard player. They had, big men that can hustle, but I feel like they haven't had that go-to bucket. I feel like that might take them over the hump this time in this March Madness run. I do like Baylor. I like Keontae George. I definitely like, the little guard play that they have. And of course, Kansas, we can't count them out. I mean, they're the reigning champs. They've always been well coached. They're a college basketball powerhouse. Now I do have some sleepers that I like. Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts is a team that went to the Sweet 16 in their last run. They almost went to the Elite Eight, but they lost a close one. But they're back this year. I love their guard, Max Abmas. He's just like he's small, but he's a bucket, like pulling from deep. He's going at guys. I just love the energy. I love watching them play. That's not a team that's likely they're not going to win. They probably won't even make the Final Four, but they're a sleeper that could really mess up a lot of people's brackets. And if you don't know, now you know. I'm telling you now. So just make sure you lock in with Oral Roberts. I definitely think they can make a run at something. I also have my eyes on VCU. VCU is a team that Bones Highland played for. The COVID year, one of their players had got COVID and they ended up not being able to play in the March Madness tournament. We know all about that. Now this year, they're back again with another solid record, 24-7. They also have Ace Baldwin. Ace Baldwin is their point guard, floor general, but he also won the A10 Player of the Year, just like Bones did. Ace was also on that team that didn't get to play in the March Madness. So I feel like the VCU team, they're hungry this time around. They missed out on their March Madness chance with the COVID and all that. So now this is their time to, they have a lot of players from that team that can come out here and let's go make this run. Let's do what we couldn't do a couple years ago because of COVID, a situation that wasn't really in their control. Players I like to watch in this March Madness run, I think Nick Smith Jr. from Arkansas. He's a lottery projected pick. He went through injuries this year, so a lot of people didn't get to really watch him play. But ever since he's came back, he's been doing good. And I feel like this March Madness run is going to be a good chance for the whole nation to see what he can do, what he can provide for his college team, and what he could potentially provide for his team in the NBA. Because I know right now all of the attention is on Victor and Scoot. And those guys, Victor's playing overseas and Scoot is in the G League. So when it comes to college guards, Nick Smith is definitely a name that people need to watch. And I think that he'll make, a lot of people go like, oh, okay, we didn't hear about this guy, but he can play. And he's going to wake a lot of teams up, I think, this March Madness run.
Yeah, Anthony Black, too, for Arkansas. He's another Nick Smith and Anthony Black. They can, having those two guys will allow Arkansas to do some good things come March Madness. And that was actually what I wrote down as far as just it's interesting because the top 5 projected picks in the draft, and things change, but you got Vic Wanyama, you got Scoot Henderson, you got the Thompson twins, right? Amen Thompson and Asar Thompson. They're playing, for overtime. And so you don't have the Zion Williamson this year. You don't have the one and dones that you don't have a Trae Young. You don't have just the one and dones that we've been used to seeing as far as the college stars, the freshmen or the sophomores that have been, the faces of the college game. Like who are the 5 faces of college basketball? If you're not like really entrenched into it, you probably wouldn't know, right? But you can see who Zion Williamson is because he was such a phenomenon in college, right? And so I think a lot of guys in this tournament, especially outside of the guys who are outside of the college game, they can do a lot to raise their stock. This is going to be exciting. You mentioned Nick Smith. I like Anthony Black. Brandon Miller's been amazing, obviously. I like a guard for Kentucky, Cason Wallace. I've been a fan of his from day one. He's not going to wow you with his athleticism, but just the way he plays. When I watch him, it's like a mini Jimmy Butler, if that makes sense. Like he gets to his spots offensively. I'm not sure if he's a natural point guard. He's sort of like a combo guard, but he can distribute and get guys involved defensively. He's probably one of the best defensive guards in the nation for Kentucky. And so that's the guy that I'm watching for. Another guy that I like, but I'm not sure. His team is on the bubble, and so we'll see if Michigan how they do in their conference tournament if they make it. But Kobe Buffkin, a lefty guard, man, I've you channel flip and you tune into some games, and anytime I watch a Michigan game, Kobe Buffkin is getting buckets. Sophomore guard, lefty for Michigan. And Michigan, another one of those programs that always just finds these guards. Every year they graduate these guys, but they find some more guards. Guys leave for the draft, but they got another one coming up. And Kobe Buffkin is another guy. If Michigan makes the tournament, if he has a couple big games, that's a guy that you can watch for. So if you have, I mean, my pick is Houston. Not knowing the bracket, because we know it's all about matchups, right? You just never know. But if you had to pick the best team that you've seen pound for pound in basketball, and I know Purdue I was never sold on Purdue because I watched Purdue and they have the big guy, Zach Edey, who's a monster. But outside of that, I don't trust their guard play. I like last year's team with Jay and Ivy. What happens when the big fella gets into foul trouble, right? What happens if, we let him get off, but at a certain point, your guards got to be able to make a play, break a defense down. I don't think they have that. They have guys that can spot up and play off the big fella and knock down shots. But you play a team like Houston that's getting up in your guards. Can they handle that pressure? Can they make a play, and break the defense down? I just haven't seen that ability. And come tournament time and pressure-packed situations, you need that. So I know we didn't mention Purdue, but I just don't trust them. So, but for me, Houston would be my pick right now. If I had to pick like a team to cut down the Nets.
My pick, honestly, I'm gonna go Alabama. I'm gonna go Alabama just off of the strength that I just like the way they play. And like I said, they're a team that's been knocking on that door. And I feel like Brandon Miller is like that key piece that they were missing that could really, when time gets tough, they can give it to him and say, "Yo, let's get a bucket," and it could be the difference between them winning it all and not winning it all. And I really think that as long as they play their cards right, they get the right matchups and they're making their shots, hitting their shots, because they put a lot of threes up. I feel like they definitely could break that barrier. But like you said, it's all about matchups. I mean, time will tell. We'll see how it really goes. But if I was picking today, I would go Alabama. I think we need to do like a Marshall Time podcast bracket on ESPN. Get some people involved.
Definitely do.
Let's see who has the bragging rights, who knows what they're talking about, what the predictions are, because people don't know, man. Making them brackets are hard. Like it's so many upsets from day one. From day one, there's so many upsets. You got somebody going to the Sweet 16, they out of there after the first game. Like it's crazy.
I remember it was a few years ago now. Michigan State had a really good team. I think I had them going pretty far, definitely in the Final Four, and they got bounced. Michigan State lost to somebody. I feel like it was Michigan State. I forgot who they lost to, but they got bounced.
Was it UMBC? Did they lose to them?
That was Virginia.
Virginia
lost to UMBC before they finally broke through.
Florida Gulf Coast, maybe?
No, who was it? Was it Middle Tennessee State? Hold on, let me look it up. Michigan State, because I was tight too. That was the quickest my bracket has ever been busted. Because usually I do pretty well when it comes to like the final 8 teams, Sweet 16 teams. Gonzaga, they broke my heart a couple times. Michigan State, Middle Tennessee. Was it Middle Tennessee? Yeah, it was March 18th, 2016. Middle Tennessee State became the 8th number 15 seed to upset number 2.
That 15-2 seed, man, that's the one. That's the one that's always gets people.
That's a tough one. And it was like, is it the 4-12 matchup?
Yeah, it's those two because it's usually the teams that are like they're good, but they're not the best in their conference.
Yeah.
They're in the top conferences versus the teams that are in the weaker conferences.
Yeah.
They've been beating up on the weaker teams, but they're actually good teams. So I feel like teams go in underestimating them, and then it hurts them when they get to that game because it takes one game and you're done.
It's like I mentioned Michigan. If Michigan gets in there, like they got Hunter Dickinson, the big fella, they got Kobe Buffkin, they got Jett Howard.
Right.
They got talent, right? And it's just the tournament time is so special and difficult because you're playing teams that you've never seen before, that you haven't played against yet. You can watch film of them, but you haven't actually went up against a guy like Kobe Buffkin. So you look at Michigan's record and be like, nah. And then you go up against them, it's something totally different. So that's what makes this so challenging when it comes to picking the brackets. That's why when it comes to picking those brackets, it's like coaching, experience, guard play. That's to me,
Yeah,
that's
that's the
in
criteria.
college more so than ever, especially coaching, experience, and guard play, because these are moments that some of these players have never experienced before, pressure packed situations. How is your guard play going to handle these things? You know, do you have a guy that can break, and having that, like you said, Brandon Miller, that generational elite talent in the college game? Do you have a guy that can change the course of an entire game, just change it just because of his talent, his individual skills? So, we definitely should. Selection Sunday is coming up this week. And you got the first four games, probably the best time, the best day of games, those first four games. So that's exciting. Also, want to show love to the women's game as well. South Carolina going back to back. My dream women's championship game is South Carolina versus Iowa. If you haven't seen Caitlin Clark play for Iowa, she's a bucket. She had 30 points, 17 assists, and 10 boards against Ohio State in their conference championship game. So getting to see Dawn Staley, Aaliyah Boston against Caitlin Clark, that'll be amazing. So I hope we get to see that, to see the best team versus the individual best scorer in the game. Like that would be dope. I
Yeah,
hope we see.
women's college ball March Madness time is lit. Like a lot of people, they might like look down upon women's basketball because it's not as exciting maybe to them as men's because of the dunking and the athletic gap. But when it comes to March Madness, like it's lit in there, especially when it gets to the Sweet 16, Final Four, Elite Eight. It's lit. And Caitlin Clark, like you said, she's shooting from deep off the dribble. In South Carolina, Dawn Staley, she's just had them as a staple for the past, decade about. So it's definitely gonna be interesting.
It's going to be fun. I'm like, even as we're recording, I'm watching. Man, I'm watching. Well, my Syracuse Orange, they fell to Wake Forest, heartbreaker. I'm watching my Tar Heels. They got to win out. I think if they beat Virginia, if they win this round and beat Virginia in the semis, I think that's how the bracket goes. They might have a chance, but they might have to win out. Last year's team that made the championship game and now they're on the bubble is crazy. So we'll see. How about your Villanova Wildcats? So I'm Syracuse and UNC. Syracuse is out. UNC may have a chance. We'll see. But Villanova, it seems like they starting to get. Are they starting to get it together real
I
quick?
mean, we'll see. We play Georgetown tonight.
That should be a W.
Yeah, it should be, but I don't know. This is our first year without Jay Wright.
Yeah.
Our best, recruit, Cam Whitmore, was out most of the season, but he came back. He's a bucket too. He's going to be real good in the NBA. But we just have to see how it plays out, man. I mean, I don't think we're going to do much just because we're in that adjusting period. But
Yeah.
we're going to go out there. We're going to play hard. That's how Nova do. We always going to give it our all. So anything can happen when that goes down. But before we get up out of here, I do want to give a shout out to Delaware High School sports basketball, especially. It's playoff season, so it's March Madness for them too. The Bob. So the girls are playing tonight. I believe it's Sanford versus Ursuline, and it should be no, it's Sanford versus Caryville, and I want to say Ursuline and Tatnall. They're playing tonight for the women's, and then tomorrow it's William Penn versus Howard, and then it's going to be Sally's versus Middletown for the boys. If you're not from Delaware, you don't know, but the Bob is like that's the March Madness for high school. There's only one division in high school sports, high school basketball for Delaware. It's one division. It's not 1A and 2A.
Yeah.
It's all the teams. Whoever makes the playoffs, you got to go
Yeah.
through you got to play everybody. Then the Final Four makes it to the Bob Carpenter Center, which is where University of Delaware, the biggest college in Delaware, that's where they play, the Bob Carpenter Center. So it's going to be there. I'm going to be in attendance for the men's, for the boys, the high school boys, see who can, pull it out because it's always a big thing in Delaware. So we're going to see what goes on there. As one shout out to all the kids that are playing, all the coaches. It's an accomplishment making it to the Bob, always is. So it's going to be lit.
Oh yeah, truly. You are the best team in Delaware because there's no, it's the top teams that make the tournament, right? I feel like Ursuline girls and Sanford girls always make it every year. It's good to see different teams in the boys' side of things. He's always been Sanford growing up, playing high school ball, and Sanford has always been the dominant team. And so, yeah, shout out to that. Dante DiVincenzo, Bones Highland. Those are some of the names that have, stepped foot in Delaware high school gyms, and now they're doing their thing in the NBA. So shout out to all the Delaware high school hoopers, girls and boys doing their thing. I wish I could be out there to catch some action, but it's good to see some new teams, especially we were talking about the boys side of things, just different teams doing their thing this year. So that's good to see. But yeah, episode 4 in the books, Selection Sunday. We're gonna set that thing up. Maybe get some of our friends to join in, some people to join in on the bracket challenge and see if they can do better than us. We'll see. I mean, it's inexact science, so you just never know. But it's something that's fun for bragging rights, and yeah, we can get that set up. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget when we post this, subscribe, link, share it. We'll be back next week. Take care.
Peace out.